Really grateful that you're with us. On behalf of Unity of Houston, I'm Reverend Karen Tudor, Senior Associate Minister at Unity of Houston, and I am one of the co-leaders of our Healing the Heart of America program. Our other co-leaders are Dr. Jean Ladding and Cindy Wigglesworth, and the three of us are delighted that this day has come, that we get to share with you a program designed to educate voters as to the power of their vote and how to use it in accordance with their own values. And this is something that we are very, very much committed to and very delighted to be able to offer. I've been invited to open us in a short prayer, so I'll just invite you to settle in for just a moment. Take a deep breath in with me. And as you do, just relax and open. You're here now. And we're grateful, so grateful for all of the good in our lives and for the good that surrounds us and for the love that is everlasting and moving through us. We call upon and open to divine wisdom, guiding us in making all of our decisions, and that compassion and understanding infill us and guide our hearts. We are open today to learning what we can do to enable us to be the most competent voters we can, enabling us to choose those most able and gifted leaders, those who can represent us and lead in our state, our city, our county, our country for the highest good of all. We already feel them in our hearts, and we are grateful for their service. And so it is. Amen.
Hello, my name is Nicole. Thank you, Karen, for that lovely opening. Appreciate it. We thank all of you that are participating in this Healing the Heart of America event, specifically named The Voting Secrets No One Tells You, the Down and Hidden Ballot. And hopefully we'll provide enough information to explain what those two concepts are. But in the meantime, I want to do a little bit of, take a little bit of moderator privilege, if I may. A very great, wonderful group of strong and compassionate and smart women have put this together for you. And Karen mentioned a few of them, but there are quite a few others. And to all of you, thank you. And hopefully we meet the need for our listeners and our presenters. So thank you very much for all of your support in this. So a few housekeeping items. As with anything that's remote, there's a little bit of etiquette that we'd ask of you in terms of muting and video management. While we're doing our panelists, everyone will be muted, and we will be unmuting those that need to speak at any given time. And then we'll move into question and answer, and we'll ask that as you indicate you have a question or a comment, that you unmute yourself, but we can help with that as well as we need to. Obviously, I've always said that the Zooming and the video thing seems even more intimate, even though it's a very kind of professional and removed topic that we're talking about. So we get to see everything, and you might even get to see one of my dogs. Who knows? Well, hopefully it'll be all good. To that end, we are also recording this. We'd like to make it available to others that weren't able to join us during this time, and that will be available on Unity's website. So if you have any concerns about that recording and the transcription that comes through with any chat, the questions that come in our chat function, please keep that in mind. We hope to have plenty of available ways for you to ask questions afterwards or anything of that nature. But if you'd like to not be indicated as participating, that is something to keep your mind on. For those that aren't as familiar with Zoom, there's a couple of opportunities you'll have in terms of making yourself known. One is the chat function. At the bottom of your screen, there should be a chat button. It'll open the window that'll allow you to ask a question. You can ask questions to individuals privately as well as to everyone. We'd ask that you use the everyone function because that'll benefit everyone. And that will allow us to call on you when we get into the question and answer time. Another way to make yourself known is by raising your hand virtually or electronically. So the participant screen is also, there's also an option down at the bottom that allows you to open that window. And you'll find at the bottom of the participant screen a raise hand, yes, no, go slower, go faster option. That's where you can ask to raise your hand. I suppose if we need to go slower or faster, we'd want to know that as well. So those options are available to you. And another part of the chat function that we'd like to bring to mind is that we're going to be monitoring the video and the chat and everything, and make sure that everything is safe and appropriate for everybody. But if you find that there's something going on in one of the videos, especially in some way that is not safe or is not appropriate for this venue, the chat is an option for you. And our folks will be watching that so that they can take that offline and save that for another time and place. So that's, I think, the last piece of housekeeping that I would like to offer is to ask for a little bit of grace. We're doing a lot of things for the first time with this Zoom process, including a live translation for our Spanish-speaking participants. And so we may have to communicate amongst ourselves to get anything fixed and in place so that it's the best experience for you. And just ask for a little bit of understanding as we go through that process. So thank you for that. Again, I'm part of the planning committee. My name is Nicole. I will be moderating this to the best of my ability. We have some heavy hitters that have joined us to be expertise in this area, in these two specific areas. And, you know, all of us are experiencing some really unprecedented times. That may or may not change the energy and the spirit in our country November 3rd. Who knows what the outcomes will be as it pertains to you. But not only will we be voting for our president, but there's a lot of other important things that will be coming up on that ballot. This is considered a general election, and that means that we're voting for the president and other related offices at the federal level. But the stuff that we're sharing with you today will also be helpful to you in the what they call a midterm election. And so in 2 years, we'll have another election that is the midterm. And so the president's not on that ballot, and so often it doesn't get as much attention, but it's equally as important, and hopefully that information will come out for you as well. The most powerful voter is an educated voter, but all of this information is really very overwhelming. And so we're hoping to provide you some resources and some information that will help with that. Every election is important. Every single election is important. But one of the things that I've heard a lot is that this is the most important election of our country's history. And so we've crafted an agenda for you that we hope really speaks to the information that you need to participate in that, and understand what the offices are, how they would be impacting you personally, how they might impact your community, and kind of grow from there. So ultimately, we hope that you will learn what you can, share what you know, and vote with your heart based in this information that we're providing. So before we get started with our speakers, I'm going to just give you a really brief, what we have said is the definition of down ballot and hidden ballot. Our presenters may have somewhat different experiences, and I hope that they will share that with you. The down ballot is really just denotes a contest for political office or other electing issue that appears in a relatively low position on a ballot. So very often you might see the presidential as first, and then as you go along, there's a lot of judges that get elected down the ballot. Our county officials often are down that ballot, especially in a general election when there's a lot going on. So this is typically contested offices in descending order from national to local. And then there's the hidden ballot, which is just that, it's hidden. Many people don't know that a vote for a candidate is a vote for a party. And our folks will speak to that today. Many also don't know the centrality of political parties as to how issues are chosen and how they are governed. This is particularly so this year. Redistricting will be an issue. And so we think it's important for you to be aware of what the hidden ballot is as you make your choices for the elections and the issues that are important to you. So we have planned to have 6 folks with us. I will move us from one to the other with a little bit of information, but again, I hope they will share with us other information that's important to it. Our lead off today is Commissioner Grady Prestage. He has been a Fort Bend County Commissioner since 1990. And before I move a little bit further into his bio, I think it's important to talk about the unique geographic region that we live in. Not only are we the 3rd largest county, but we are, I think, kind of in family to our contiguous counties in a way that I've not seen in other areas. So Fort Bend, Montgomery, Galveston, Brazoria, all of them and others skirt us, and we work in concert because our economies and our communities are so entwined. And so I think it's important for us to think that way as well as we look at other offices around the community. Commissioner Prestage serves Precinct 2 and is the first African-American commissioner since the 1880s. He's a registered professional engineer and has worked as a civil engineer in a variety of firms. So with that, I will ask Commissioner Prestage to tell us what you know about the hidden ballot, how you see it playing out at the local level, and the importance of that at all levels that you've experienced. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Nicole, and I want to welcome all the participants in this this Zoom session. I don't know if you had the same experience, but I hadn't heard of Zoom about 9 months ago, so I've had a lot of Zoom meetings during this pandemic, and I think that's going to be a way of life for a little while. WebEx, Teams, all the other systems that are out there will be the way we do business moving forward. I'm not exactly sure right now how it's going to affect the political discourse in this country, but it will probably have some effect. Politics is hand-to-hand combat to a certain extent, and when you can't have hand-to-hand combat, you have to find some other way to win friends and influence people. First of all, let me introduce myself again. I'm Grady Prestage, and I serve as a county commissioner in Fort Bend County. Fort Bend County, as you know, is one of the fastest growing counties in this country for years, and though it's a subset of this market, and when you compare ourselves against Harris County, the 3rd largest county in the country, it seems pretty small. But if you look at Fort Bend's population, which is in excess of 800,000, and put it in proper perspective. Now, I'm a Louisiana boy. I'm from Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Fort Bend County has a larger population than East Baton Rouge Parish and Orleans Parish combined. So if you look at it in that sense, it's a big market. If we were situated in West Texas or parts of East Texas with this much population, it'd be a major market in the state. We'd have our own television stations, our own daily papers. We'd have an airport. We'd have a zoo. We'd have a lot of things that we don't necessarily have to have now because we share that with Harris County. And I know that Judge Echols and some of his colleagues on Commissioner's Court used to really get upset when our injured patients end up in your hospital district. Thank you very much. We appreciate that so much. But we're not in a position to have a hospital district in Fort Bend County because we got Harris County there and UTMB and some other assets available in the region. So let me get back on task. The hidden ballot. And I had to look up what hidden ballot was and try to figure out how to weave this all together. And but a couple of points you make in the definition of hidden ballot is that it's you vote for a candidate, you vote for a party. So just starting off with that statement, it segments this discussion in 2 parts. Because if you have local elections, which are typically nonpartisan, city councils, school boards, municipal utility districts, which may not mean a lot in Harris County. Well, it does in unincorporated Harris County. That's those are elected bodies that control a lot of things that that control our daily lives, water and sewer. I mean, that's civilization right there, you know. And they've got big budgets, and they have and they conduct major public works projects. And the legislature has given them more and more powers to hire contract deputies, to have parks, to do landscaping and beautification and a lot of different things. So it's like they're like mini municipalities. But those entities are nonpartisan. So it's kind of hard to speak about a party situation in that vein. But it does speak to the fact that it's part of the hidden ballot. A lot of times those elections are conducted when you have a major election, and folks don't always get down to the bottom of the ballot.
I got in finally.
And when they're held at times when they're not on a general election, the participation is low. So that's a problem. And you know, there's a saying that goes that the world is run by folks who show up. And so, you know, those people who have the presence of mind to know and understand the issues at the local level, where the rubber hits the road, a lot of times control the situation more so than input from the masses. So I'm trying to speak intelligently. I don't serve on a body. I do serve on a body that is partisan. Okay, the Commissioners Court is a partisan body. We're elected by party, and I'm a Democrat. And I found in service on Commissioners Court that you have to learn how to count, and to count to 3. It's really easy. 1, 2, 3. You can get there. And I'm gonna do this for Judge Echols. 1, 2, 3, because you know sometimes county judges don't count like regular folks. They get it sooner or later, but
it's hard to count to 3 sometimes, Grady.
Yeah, it is sometimes. Yeah. So, but it goes back to another thing I want to get. It might be on a tangent, but I'll say it anyway. My mother, the late Dr. Jewel Prestage, was a renowned political scientist, and so I kind of grew up in a household with a political scientist. And I remember from an early age, I heard talking about politics, and she said that politics, by definition, is the science of who gets what. Okay? Politics is the science of who gets what. Anytime you have more than one person doing anything, you got politics at play. And so you must learn how to master politics. Sometimes the hidden ballot is a function of that. For instance, if you want to pass a bond referendum and you have a constituency that may not be necessarily supportive, if there's a small turnout, you have that bond election at a time when you've got a big turnout where the masses can pretty much carry the day. If you put that bond referendum on a low turnout election, a lot of people who may not see things your way or may not like what you want to do, whether it be schools, whether it be roads, bridges, or drainage, can actually determine the outcome of the election. So you have to employ politics at that level too. It's a science of who gets what. So the hidden ballot is, in the definition that Nicole gave us, was pretty much about the party thing. And even when it comes to redistricting, that's pretty much a partisan thing. I mean, I've been through 1991, 2000. I've been through 4 redistricting cycles, I was able to fortunately get what I wanted out all 3, and I also had a unique experience to help do some legislative redistricting. When I first got elected, the chairman of the House Redistricting Committee, and Robert, you served with him, is Tom Uher. And our county, he was from Missouri County, Sweeney, Matagorda County area. They called me one day and said, "Why don't you come up here and draw some lines? You all picking up a new legislative district, come draw the lines." And so, I went up, and this was pre-internet, pre a lot of this technology. And I sat in his office with some crayons and drew lines on a map, and they held up for the most part. But as a courtesy, Representative Uher called one of the Fort Bend County representatives whose district would be affected. He was a Republican named Jim Tallis. Rob, I think you probably served with him too, and asked him to come up and bless it. And it was a very collegial thing. And he changed a few little boxes here and there, but for the most part, that was it.
Commissioner.
Hands, and that was it. So anyway, I'll reserve any other comments and for later on if there are questions and answers. But I want to leave you with this: politics is the science of who gets what, and the use of the hidden ballot kind of speaks to that in a major way.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I love that quote, that saying. So thank you to your mother for passing that along so you could share it with us, because that is super, super important for sure. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, Mr. Doug Ray. It's nice to meet you, Doug. Special Assistant to the County Attorney at the Office of Harris County Attorney, Vince Ryan's office. And he often speaks on voting rights. So he's going to talk to us today about the Down Ballot. So to you, Mr. Ray.
Okay, and there's one additional interesting biographical piece of information y'all didn't mention. And that is, in fact, I'm sure that the folks that contacted our office to try and get me to speak didn't know this, but I've been a member of the Unity Church for at least 12 years. So I'm part of the family. There you go. I see Karen every week, watch her on Facebook. So the Down Ballot. When you think about a ballot, they start with the most important races at the top. So president's going to be first, then senator, then U.S. representative. But think about the last time you had some interaction with the government. Did you talk to the president? Likely not. Probably the most recent action is you went down to the tax office to renew your registration. You actually probably have more interaction with the people down at the end of the ballot than you do at the people at the top of the ballot. And they actually have a more direct influence on your life than those people up at the top of the ballot. This is going to be a very long ballot. And I would advise you, our ballot is not quite set yet in Harris County, but you can go to the website that the clerk maintains, harrisvotes.com. And on that, you'll see a tab that says sample ballot. And in a couple of days, what you'll be able to do is click on that sample ballot tab, and it'll bring up a menu where you can fill in your name and your street address and such. And it will allow you to look at the specific ballot that's unique to you. In other words, everything that you'll be allowed to vote on election day when you go into the ballot box. We have countywide polling places in Harris County now, so you can go to any of our ballot boxes. We're going to have 120 different early voting places. They'll open on October 13th and go through the 30th of October. And then we'll have them on election day. We'll have 108 different locations that you can go to, and you can go to any one of them. And that unique ballot, when you walk in there, that'll be pulled up for you. I don't know if you guys can hear me or not, because my...
Yes, Mr. Ray, we can, if you can hear me.
I don't know if you could hear me. My screen just froze, but anyways, I'll continue on. So what you'll see when you go in there is dozens and dozens and dozens of different races. You'll have president, you'll have U.S. senator, you'll have U.S. representative, you'll have Texas Supreme Court justice you can vote for, Texas criminal court law judges you can vote for. You can vote for the State Board of Education representative for our area. You can vote for your state senator, your state representative. There'll be people from the local Court of Appeals, the Texas Court of Appeals that'll be on your ballot. You'll have almost 30 different district court judges that you'll get to decide about. Then you'll have some county court of law judges. You'll have the district attorney. You'll have the county attorney, the office where I work. the sheriff, the tax assessor collector, and even the county clerk, which ordinarily is not on this year, but because Dr. Troutman, who was elected last time, decided she needed to resign, the unexpired term will be on there. You'll have some of the county board of education members on there. You'll have a county commissioner race that's contested. If you live in county commissioner precinct 3, which is Steve Raddick's precinct, he's retiring and they're trying to decide who to replace him. Half the justices of the peace, 8 different justices of the peace. Think about this. A justice of the peace is the judge who gets to decide whether you should be evicted from your home or not. In this present situation where so many people have lost their jobs and are subject to eviction, you might care about whether the judge is willing to evict you simply because you can't pay your rent. So that's a very important consideration. You won't get to the justice of the peace to get way down to the end of the ballot. And of course, then there's some constables, or the people out in the county are most likely to pull you over if you're speeding. And we have one more thing that we don't ordinarily have. You may remember back in May, a bunch of school boards and city councils and stuff had elections scheduled, and we called those off because of the pandemic. 90 different entities, school boards, cities, mud districts, all kinds of variety of things, have now scheduled their election to be held on November 3rd. So if you live in one of those areas, one of those school districts or one of those cities that postponed their local election, you might find that decision on that ballot as well. So this is going to be a very long ballot. People need to go all the way to the end. If you go into vote in person, you'll see on your electronic screen, it'll start with the first screen with president at the top, but you'll have to flip by every single one of these in order to get to the end. And it would behoove you to go ahead of time, print off that sample ballot I just described that's unique to you, and decide who you're going to vote for before you walk into that polling place. You can take that piece of paper with you with all your notes on it, and you can have it with you in the polling place when you're trying to click on the different boxes in the machine. One difference between this election and former elections is you can no longer vote straight party ticket. You used to be able to just check one box and all the Democrats would show up, or check a different box, all the Republicans would show up. You can't do that anymore. That's not going to be an option. So you're going to have to go through and check every single one. Just to make it easier for you, let me tell you that in each race, the Republican name will be first and the Democratic second. Now, the order that everything appears on in these situations, that's set by statute. And which name or which party appeared first depends on who got the most votes in the state of Texas for governor in the last gubernatorial election. So since Governor Abbott was elected, that's why the Republicans are first. It's not something we did. Don't call us up and complain about that. Call your local representative. Tell them to change the law if you don't like it. And also, the order that they appear on the ballot, you know, with the president first and on down to constable at the end, that is also dictated by statute. If I had my druthers, I might arrange it a different way, but we have to follow the law.
Mr. Ryan.
So, anyways, I'll turn that back over to you.
Thank you so much. You have done a lot of heavy lifting for our intent with this group, and how important that down ballot is, but also just the mechanics of this all. So, and I love that you brought it back around to the hidden ballot, right? It's the hidden ballot determines the order of how things appear on our ballots, and so these things are inextricably tied. There's a method to all of this madness that our founding fathers put together for us, and closer relatives, but in the end, it can get very, very complex. It makes me think of all politics is local, right? And so thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. So our next speaker is Tanya Rivera. Thank you, Tanya, for being here. She is the Director of Government Affairs and Community Relations at Harris County Commissioner Adrian Garcia's office, and that's also Precinct 2, but here in Harris County. She's accomplished in a variety of ways, and so I think she'll bring a lot of good perspective as well to this issue of the hidden ballot. And Ms. Rivera, please, Mr. Ray did a great job of tying these two issues together, but just the importance of voting as a whole. So we look forward to what you have to share with us, and I'll let you know when the time comes up.
Okay, so go ahead and start speaking then. Hi, Unity family. So I've been going to Unity since high school, so really glad to see some of you. So I do work for County Commissioner Adrian Garcia, who was elected at the end of 2018 and has been in office since 2019. And it's been a very a dynamic shift, I would say, at the county, because previously it was dominated by Republicans at Commissioner's Court, and now we have 3 Democrats. And I would say that as someone that's grown up in Houston my entire life, I feel like there's been a dramatic shift at Commissioner's Court. I never paid attention previously. I don't think that, you know, paying attention to politics can be difficult. I mean, imagine having to watch a city council meeting, a Commissioner's Court meeting is a lot of information. And even there's other entities like the Houston-Galveston Area Council right now that are discussing the I-45 expansion. And so there's a lot of meetings, and we have to depend on our elected officials to really pay attention to the issues that matter to us and to stay engaged by writing emails, to calling in, et cetera. But something that I've heard from the community now for Commissioner's Court is that our meetings previously were about maybe 12 minutes long. And now we have had record-setting meetings that go well into the night, till midnight, because I don't know if it's just people feel like they have a voice now, but they're really engaging. And so I do invite you. We meet every other Tuesday. So this Tuesday we have a Commissioner's Court meeting, and it'll start at 10 a.m. and you can sign up to speak. And it's the same thing with City Council. So I've had the privilege of working for 4 elected officials now. I worked for Adrian Garcia when he was a City Council member, but I also worked for State Senator Mario Gallegos and Mayor Sylvester Turner at the City of Houston. And so what I would say in terms of the importance of voting is that local elections truly do matter. I think that a lot of times we know that each person has a party that they're affiliated with, but really at the local level, there's not much that they can do on those particular issues. So there are people that may be focused on one issue. It could be whether someone's pro-life or pro-choice. Well, the mayor does not have any control over that, right? There's the governors, the president, and a lot of the national conversation will have to do with that, as well as our Supreme Court justices that we unfortunately don't get to elect. And so there are other judicial positions that are also very important. I ran for Justice of the Peace in 2016, and one of the things that I found is that, yes, my name was like the last candidate to be considered. And so some of the things that people told me to think about was not using my entire last name because it's hyphenated. But I felt like that's something that I needed to do because I'm half Hispanic and half Persian. So you're going to have the dynamic as well of people saying, well, she's not really Hispanic, or she's not really Persian, or everything. And so it's one of those things that sometimes we don't know who these candidates are. And so people will go with their gender preferences or a name that they've seen on some yard signs. Or I've even heard, you know, if you have a name that sounds easy to pronounce or is like a color, brown, white, etc., that people go with those names because it's just something easy. And so what I do often tell people to look at is the League of Women Voters. They put out a guide every time before the elections, and they do send folks questionnaires in terms of where they stand on various issues that are related to the position. And I think that that's really what's important when we talk about trying to be independent, is what is the role that that person is going to be filling? What is their experience? And while their party can matter, at the same time, we have to think about what role they can actually play in that particular issue that's important to you. So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions if that comes up.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rivera. I really appreciate that. You too did a lot of heavy lifting for us in the specific issues, these kind of hidden issues that come up with the ballot in terms of just how names come up for you. And it speaks to also how people do their yard signs, you know, and how the visual layout of branding for candidates plays out, and colors, and how all of that happens. And so it's pretty amazing. There definitely has been a lot of change on Commissioner's Court in terms of really 3 new members with Rodney Ellis, Adrian Garcia, and then our county judge with Mina Hidalgo. And so that's an important example of how the down ballot especially plays out, because I know there have been a lot of discussion about how that played out with this new Commissioner's Court. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So we'll move on to our next one. And Ms. Rivera, we're going to be taking questions after all of our presenters, so we hope you can stick around. I'm sure there'll be some for you. Thank you. Let's see. So Dr. Lamb, and I want to make sure if, let me do this. Let's go to former Harris County Judge Robert Eccles. I feel like a reporter suddenly, and I should have a microphone. Judge Eccles is an experienced attorney, and he has been involved in a variety of things. I had the privilege of working for him when he was county judge, and so I got firsthand experience in what the broad spectrum of issues, and that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I said in light of Ms. Rivera's comments, that understanding what issue is important to you, it's hard for all of the issues to be important. Even someone like me who has an opinion about everything, I have priority issues. I call them soapbox issues. And they are led at a variety of different levels of government, but the most close to us, for example, roads and flooding, which is such a huge issue, do come out of the city and county. And so it really behooves me and us to think about that in terms of how they will make decisions around budgeting and allocation of resources in general. So, sorry, I was introducing Judge Eccles, and so he has been at a variety of levels of government. He's in the private sector now, and I'm sure he will talk a lot about his experience, and I will allow him to do that. So Judge Eccles, please share with us.
Thanks, Nicole, and I do appreciate everyone being here. I see also down here that we've got Katie Miner there. Katie, hello, say hi to John. I do want to thank the Post community for putting this together. Nicole, of course, she did work for me years ago and was really strong in the mental health issues, and one of the issues that we work on. And people don't really think about the county and how it impacts. I appreciated the comments that have been made so far. And Tanya, you talk about some of the issues at the local level versus the federal. But it does carry through, and they've asked me to talk about the hidden ballot, but it really does kind of roll together. The partisan race, you tend to think of that. And Grady, you mentioned at the beginning that victory goes to those who show up. And it starts in the primary process. And most people here probably are thinking about the election this fall, and a lot of folks say, well, I just don't like any of them. Well, maybe if you actually voted in the primary, you could have a choice in who any of them are. We have a primary process that tends to drive the politics towards the extreme. The social media we have today tends to magnify the voice of the extremes on both sides of the political spectrum and drive that division in politics more because of I think part of that is a lack of participation in the primary process. And in the end, all the politics really is personal. There used to be a famous quote that all politics is local, but it's personal, and it depends upon what the issue is that drives your decision. So when you start looking at the politics and you start at the top of the ballot, of course, president, a highly partisan race, Republicans, Democrats, they'd make their case on that. Congress, when you move down the ballot, it still matters who you vote for with the political party in place. In the congressional level, and it's a little different. We talk about the state and the federal side. At the state side, you have the Republicans and Democrats, likewise in Congress. In Congress, your first vote is going to be the one that really matters. And you can look at, I've had Democrat congressional candidates that have been good friends, members of Congress that have been good friends of mine for many years. But the first vote they cast was for the Democrat speaker. In this case, no matter what you vote for, Republican or Democrat, the first votes they cast will be for Nancy Pelosi. So you are setting the agenda for the country, or for the House at least, your vision for that on Nancy Pelosi. Likewise, for Republican, it's, I don't know, who will be the speaker, maybe McCarthy or somebody coming out of, Kevin McCarthy out of California, one of the, I don't know even who the minority leader is in the House now for the Republicans, but it'll be driving that vote. As you move through Congress, you can still have an effective member from the other party, the opposition party. I've got a close friend in Washington, Seth Moulton, who was liberal Democrat from Marblehead, Boston area, Massachusetts. He's been pretty effective at being able to go in and work with Republicans and do bipartisan issues. Tom DeLay, when he was a congressman out there in Fort Bend, was in the minority party when he got elected, and he was able to work closely with the Democrats as he went through Congress. So that your minority party can be effective, but that first vote really matters. At the state level, the coalition that elects the speaker is usually a bipartisan coalition. The speaker is always elected by from the majority party, but in this case, the Democrats came in together and as a group voted to elect the Republican that they would like to see as speaker. So you get much more of a bipartisan Texan first kind of attitude coming out of the state legislature, regardless of whether it's a Republican speaker. When I was there, it was a Democrat speaker, but the Republicans, and it's a politics of personalities. It still matters as you go down the ballot, but it becomes less critical. When you move down to races like county commissioner up there with Commissioner Prestage, or in Harris County with Commissioner Garcia, my natural coalition at the Commissioner's Court was actually a close working coalition with Commissioner Fontino on the East End, the area that is now represented by Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Lee, Franco Lee, would come in pretty common with me, the two Democrats on the court. Sometimes even more closely aligned with what I was trying to do than I would get with some of my Republican colleagues. So it was much more of a coalition building on personalities than on party. And then you move on down the ballot into the judicial races, and there the party, I think, really is out of place. I truly am one who believes that judicial races should be nonpartisan elections. I've never voted a straight ticket. We've had a bunch of good Republican judges that got wiped out in this last election. We had some bad ones that needed to get beat. And that's one where it pays to educate yourself and go through and look individually to those judges. And there's important things that they decide. And Tanya mentioned in the beginning about some of the issues, the very divisive issues we hear about at Congress that we maybe don't impact at the local level as much, and particularly issues like abortion, where you don't get to decide whether we're going to be legal or not in Harris County, but the commissioners do decide on who pays for it. And so there's budget issues that come along, and what does the hospital district do? Issues of gun rights. That's a big driver. And a lot of my friends, they may not like Donald Trump. They may think he's a narcissist. They may think that they don't like his tweets, but they like the issue on guns, or they don't like the issues. I mean, people look at different issues. It's what is personal about politics that matters to you. So the hidden ballot, the down ballot races that we talk about from a party perspective make a big difference. I did notice, and before I run out of time here, particularly, I believe I saw in there, Stephanie, is that a Texans Against Gerrymandering sign that I see behind you there? Is that what that says? I can't really, it looks like that's what that's about.
Yes, it's Texans Against Gerrymandering.
I was on the other side of the equation. Grady mentioned, Tom, you heard before, the Democrats were masters at gerrymandering before. And so that's just part of it. As you get into office, and I'm sure, I wish Commissioner Garcia was here, because my guess is the Commissioner's Court will redistrict a little bit, they'll balance the population, and it will just happen to work out that they wind up with 3 Democrat county commissioner precincts. It's just the nature of politics, and there is no way to avoid it. I was on the losing side of that battle when I was in the legislature. There was the Democrats controlled the legislature. And in fact, the final coalition that put together the second minority congressional district, African-American Al Green, where Al Green is elected in Houston Congressional District, African-American congressional districts in Dallas, additional Hispanic districts, was a coalition of Republicans and minorities that put that together. And the Democrat Party took exception to that and went and targeted the Black Democrats that worked on those redistricting plans and took those people out in the primary. So the redistricting is a highly partisan state, and it is one that is very personal, at least to the people that are in elective office that have to run in those seats. So it is important to work your way down the ballot. It's important to understand that partisan nature of the ballot. It's important to understand those things that are personal to you and how those down ballot races impact those issues that are personal to you. And maybe it's toll roads, maybe it's abortion, maybe it's guns, maybe it's flood control, maybe it's juvenile justice or adult justice, bail bond policy, those kinds of issues. I think the bail bond system in Harris County was broken, but there's different ways to fix it, and you need to go look at the judges. And when I was there, I had Republican judges that were terrified when somebody they let out on a bail killed somebody. There's less concern about that now. So just look at the different offices and the people and the policies as you go down the ballot, and understand where party matters more and where it's more the individuals that are in those offices.
Judge Eccles, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, and really y'all have, it's amazing that our speakers, we didn't like even plan this, but you each have done the exact work around this consecutive piece. And you had said that, you know, it's the nature of politics that things happen like this with redistricting. I would say it's probably the nature of human beings, right? Each official has run for their office because they thought they could do it the best, and that they really could see it from their perspective. And so I think for the most part, all of our elected officials come from a place where they think, and many are right, not just thinking that they can do it really, really well. And so they're making choices from there. And a couple of other things that I thought were important that came out of Judge Eccles' comments was, you know, at the federal level, the Electoral College makes the decision, the final decision on the presidential, on the president, based on hopefully what constituents in their area have decided. And one of the things that I've always been personally kind of entertained by, I kind of understand how it goes, is the president's budget. Everybody has a reaction to the president's budget. And in reality, the president's budget is his Christmas list. Or in this case, it's always been his Christmas list. And it's Congress that decides what the president's going to get for Christmas. Now, that's where the hidden ballot comes in, right? So if they're in control of either House or Congress, they want to support the president's budget. So please remember that the people writing the checks are those in Congress, and they are elected directly by you. And so that's an important feature and distinction between this, and speaks to both the down ballot and the hidden ballot. And then the other thing that one of the reasons that I have a lot of passion about this issue, and we can talk a little bit more about this in the Q&A, is this issue of, and I don't know if anybody's ever heard this, but we are a weak governor state. And what that means is that, to me, my feeling about that is how laws get passed. And there's an old story that says when Bob Bullock was lieutenant governor, nothing got heard or seen unless it was on an index card in his breast pocket of his jacket. And it is that level of human consideration that really impacts us. And the county, for example, can't do anything that the legislature doesn't allow them to do. And so that has to be in the breast pocket on an index card of the lieutenant governor and get through both houses before it ever comes to the governor. And that's a lot of power to carry for anybody in that office. And so as we talk about the president, we talk about the governor, those are critical roles, obviously. They set the tone. They do a lot of things that relate to like COVID and flooding and disasters and so forth, but do not discount the importance of the lieutenant governor and others that are in our state and federal houses. So I just wanted to, those are my 2 cents. I'll be quiet now. And we have our final speaker, and I really appreciate and hope that I do her name justice, Stephanie Tamarello. Judge Eccles referenced her in just a moment ago in his comments. She is a graduate from the Fort Bend County Leadership Program. Has worked with the Texas Against Gerrymandering, as you will see in her background, and has served as an election judge. So I'm sure there's much more to her biography than that, but we'd love to hear you speak, Ms. Tamarello, on any of the comments that you've heard. And if you have any questions, you might be able to kick us off with that, though I will ask you to let me know before you do that. So.
All righty. Let me get back. I have, yes, many other things, but this particular thing, Texas Against Gerrymandering, is a group that we can talk about. By the way, on our list of people attending is the president of our organization, Lydia Ozuna, who is probably much more articulate about talking about all this than I am. But let me ask you a question. I have some numbers and see if you all know what those. This is a presentation side of it. It's not the question side, but let me just see if you know what these numbers are. 150, 31, 15, 36, and 2. Do you know what those numbers are from?
I don't.
Somebody?
Started with 150. I thought I might know, but then you lost me after those. Yeah.
And 31?
That'd be a state number.
So you don't want people that are serving the legislature.
This is a test.
I'm going to stay out of this because I was one of those.
Yeah, me too. I think I know the answers to all this. I'll let you go.
Geared at the state level in Texas. The 150 is the House of Representatives. The 31 is the Texas State Senate. The 15 is the State Board of Education. 36 representatives, U.S. congressional representatives, and 2 senators. And this is at the state level. So when you were talking about, I'm looking at the state at this particular point. At the state level, and you're talking about what's the hidden ballot? If we go to the House, we will see that the majority in the House is 83 of Republicans. The majority of the Senate is 19 Republican. I won't go through the State Board of Education because those are not always broken down that way, but they do have partisanship. The U.S. Congress representatives we have are 23 right now, Republican. And the U.S. senators, our 2 representatives, senator representatives to the U.S. Senate are 2. So who's making decisions for us at the state level? That's a hidden ballot concept, okay? The other thing I'd like to really point out, no one really has said anything about it yet. So those people are making decisions at the state level for us. And when it comes to redistricting, they are the ones who are part of the committees. There are different committees, House committee and a Senate committee, that are doing hearings and who are redistricting committees. And those people, the folks who are head of those committees, are the ones who are making decisions about what districts we all will be in at the end of the on the basis of the census. No one has mentioned the census yet as being one of the key, very key, crucial elements of this year's election. So whoever the census, so it's very important that we see that people fill out the census. It's very important that we know what the census does. So for the next 10 years, the people that I mentioned above, especially the House and the Senate, will be making decisions about what districts, how districts are drawn. I don't know how many of you know how districts are drawn. And let me just say, we are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization. Both parties have gerrymandered. Both parties have, at one point or another, drawn district lines, depending on who's in control. What we're looking at and want to consider right now is we're advocating that an independent citizens redistricting commission be formed at the state level, and that the redistricting would be in the hands of citizens, not in the hands of politicians. Because often there's a conflict of interest that one wants to keep their position, and gerrymandering is the way to do that. And gerrymandering, Texas is the most gerrymandered state in the United States. Now, that goes all the way down to your school board. I can give you a good example. For instance, I'm in Fort Bend. And my daughter graduated from the Fort Bend Independent School District. So the Fort Bend Independent School District is also gerrymandered. And we have a piece of the corner of county that is known as Fort Bend Houston. That county, that piece of our county that can vote both in Fort Bend County and in Harris County, is really not paid much attention to when it comes to the Fort Bend Independent School District. And it's predominantly African American and Hispanic. And the needs of those schools that are in that area are not as attended to as the schools in Sugar Land and other places. So it's just an interesting phenomenon that because they're not single member districts. Anyway, but I just wanted to kind of bring up the point of behind the ballots. When we go out and vote, we are voting for those who are going to be making decisions for each of us, and crucial decisions at the state level because of the census this year. And that will determine, the census will determine how money, like $675 billion will be spent, federal funds will be spent on schools and hospitals and roads and public works and other programs, and who's going to be making those decisions. So I think it's just important that we bring that into play when we're making decisions about voting.
Do you have anything else, Stephanie, or can we? We'll obviously have an opportunity to, Ms. Tamarello, I apologize, to ask questions here in just a moment. But I wanted to key in on a couple of things that you mentioned, which I think are important to talk about. And you kind of came back to it with the census piece at the end there, which is, so I used to work in the federal government. I worked at I worked at the Department of Justice, but was not I was a bureaucrat. I was not an appointee, if you will. And there'll probably be people on this panel that would disagree with me, but I think if the federal government is doing a very small number of things. They do our defense, they take care of Medicare and Social Security, and then they give money away. And that giving money away piece is super, super important. And that is determined how each state and communities within those states get those monies based on census data. And so it's determined every 10 years. They're making some changes to that with the community survey. So that's another conversation. But that's how critical it is. And I was trying to think of some examples. I was at Justice Department, so a lot of mine was around juvenile justice and adult justice. And if you think about things like community-oriented policing, for example, which is a critical issue for us now, as we've seen through the media, but also just tying our law enforcement officers to communities and really helping build relationships there. That is something that's implemented at the local level, but funded at the federal level. And the feds are deciding their money based on census information. So it's just a really important point, I think, to show how we can, at an individual level, have an influence on things that are super important to us. And so do your census.
Right.
The other thing that I came up with for Texas, specifically around gerrymandering, is to not forget that football is king in Texas. And so the school districting, redistricting process is often thought about in that consideration, and not necessarily the way that's best for all of us. And so they want to pick up certain players and certain people, and that those things happen. So I think what's really important for me is that these decisions are made by human beings, and we all have our own limitations and our own motivations. And that's not different for anybody else in the world. And so we have to really think about that in terms of the grace that we give others, but also the information we give others. So I am going to share really quick some handouts that we're going to have available for you on the website after this is over, and it may be that they get shared on the chat. I'll leave that to somebody to decide. But it's going to take me sharing my screen. So please stick with me while I get there. And let's see. So the first one I'd like to share with you is, let me make this as large as I can, are some important dates. So again, this is the information that will be available to you in a multiple ways, hopefully. And we have our last day to register to vote, which is October 5th. The last day to request mail-in ballot. This has been a hot topic on media lately. Please remember that in Texas, you want to make sure you have the opportunity to do mail-in, absentee ballot, but it is driven by a variety of things, and you have to ask, you can't just ask to mail in, you have to have specific criteria to meet. And then of course we have our election day, and we'll have early voting coming up very soon. I would suspect and this is my opinion, I always like to qualify that we will see long lines at the ballot box. We did in the interim, the midterm election after 2016. So in 2018, there were very long lines. We have a lot of issues that are personal to folks that have been coming up. And so please consider the early voting period, which starts October 13th. Then we have, sorry, I want to make sure this is the one I want, right here. We'll also have access to, just a moment, let me see if I can make that bigger. Helpful links. So some of these have been mentioned already today. So how to register, how to get the sample ballot, which Mr. Ray covered, and then you'll also get to see what's on the ballot at that time. A basic place to start is around who represents me and looking at their platform, seeing if they're up for election. Sorry about that. And then you have the party platforms. So we often talk about there being two parties because those seem to be in the majority, but they're actually, we've given you sites for 4 parties. There's the Green Party and the Libertarian Party as well. And then there's just education opportunities. So that is the League of Women Voters is historically nonpartisan and is a really great resource and a place to start so that you can not only find out what's on the ballot, they'll help you with that as well, but just the mechanics of voting overall. And so again, as I mentioned, I'm going to stop sharing. These will be available even afterwards. It looks like Donna has shared the links to those on the chat. So you can go to those now if you'd like, if they want to help you with some of your questions. And in about 1 minute, I'm going to ask Donna to and others to keep their eye on the chat and the raise the hand function, and I will as well. And we will start taking questions. I would like to start with one, and I think I'm going to direct this to Commissioner Prestage, if I can. And then I believe Ms. Tamarello maybe has a question or two after mine, and she can tell us who those are for. So Commissioner Prestage, from your perspective, what's the best way that us as voting citizens can impact the issue around redistricting? There's a lot involved in that, and it impacts a whole bunch. But for us, that just person on the street, how can we impact that, and what should we be considering as we think about that?
Well, right now, the elected bodies do the redistricting. That's the way it is right now in Texas. I saw in the chat room that there are other ways that's being done in California and maybe other places in this country. Right now, the rules are what the rules are. And the legislature draws the congressional districts and their own legislative districts and State Board of Education districts. And at the county level, counties draw their own commissioner precincts, justice of peace precincts, and constable precincts. And so that's kind of where it is. One thing you can do is contact at the local level, contact your commissioner's court members. Start with the one that represents you and ask to serve on a citizens committee. At the city council level, same thing. Talk to your city council member or the mayor and ask to be a part of it. A lot of times you're actually looking for people to serve in these committees. Folks don't have time. They don't have the interest. In my county, and I have to keep referring back to Fort Bend County because that's all I know. Right now, we have a citizens committee where each member of Commissioner's Court selects 3 representatives to serve on this committee. And they, along with our consultant, which is normally a law firm or some type of political consulting firm, they hash out the plans. Now, truth be told, I'm not going to appoint 3 persons who don't have my interest in mind. That's just, I'm fair, but I'm not stupid, But yeah, I don't want somebody's going to undermine my interests, and other commissions aren't doing the same thing. And we've come out with of the 4 different redistricting cycles I've had, we've come out with unanimous decisions on 3 of them. And the only time we didn't have one was when the personalities involved were attempting to dilute my my district, and they did, but they made my district a 68% Democratic district when it was a 72% Democratic district. So I was really worried and scared about that, and I ended up getting 74% of the vote when it's all said and done. I mean, so it's kind of, and it backfired on the commissioner that participated in it, because he lost the next election cycle because of some areas that he took from me. So it was just, usually it works out fine. It works out fine. I think that you'll find that they're willing to get you involved if you ask. I mean, it may be just that easy. Now, school board level, that's a little bit different. Okay, we don't have single member districts in Fort Bend ISD. We have them in the Lamar Consolidated School District. In Fort Bend ISD, it's an at-large election, but there's a residency requirement, and the votes come at large. It's a real odd system, and a plurality wins it. So if you can get 40% of the vote and win with no runoff, and so it favors incumbents, and it favors incumbents if they have multiple challenges, because all they got to do is get a plurality of the vote, the most votes, not necessarily 51%. So that's a little odd, and that's been challenged for years, and it's still being challenged. That's an oddball situation. But getting involved is usually a function of asking first, and you'd be surprised how welcome they are to have participation from citizens.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Commissioner Prestage. Ms. Tamarello, do you have any questions for our panelists? And if so, who would you direct that at?
Myself unmuted here.
Sure.
I don't really have a question of the panelists, although I would direct a question about why we want to form what we're talking about when it comes to forming an independent citizens redistricting commission. Be in the hands of citizens and not in the hands of politicians. May I ask somebody who's on the chat, Lydia, to say something about that? She's from Texas Against Gerrymandering. Because this is an important issue coming up with the census and with the election, and who's going to make those decisions at the state level. Can I do that?
You're wanting to ask another participant?
Yeah, Lydia Ozuna.
I think we'd like to keep it to our panelists specifically, okay, if we can, but please, by all means, share some of that information in the chat. That might be the best way to share that. That'd be great.
Yeah, I noticed that in there, our website and our contact information has been put in there, okay, for people who would like to know more about that.
What about?
Let me just clarify one thing that know that this is a non-partisan type thing. So over history and time, various parties have had control, and therefore they have either gone one way or the other. What we're looking to make happen is that every citizen has a vote, and every citizen has the opportunity to be represented in their voting process. And because of gerrymandering, that's not always true. So anybody on the panel can.
I was just going to make a comment. I mean, we're going to have a major issue after the census this time around, because the state didn't want to invest any funds in outreach and engagement, and now at the last minute they're trying to throw some money for TV ads. But in our precinct, we're the lowest in terms of response rate. We're at 59%, and it's a predominantly Hispanic area, and we've been doing everything we can. And obviously right now it's a very unique situation with COVID, so we can't just go and do all the things that we wanted to do and have events and those types of things. But at 59%, we're going to have a large chunk of folks that are not going to get counted. And we were supposed to have until October 31st to complete the census. And now it's been changed to September 30th. And I know there's still some discussions in the courts about going back to that October 30th date, but that's definitely going to affect redistricting. And for our office purposes, we do intend to have some community meetings. Obviously, they'll have to be virtual in terms of redistricting. I would like to see something independent. I just don't know how that would work, if the state legislature would have to pass that. And as we can see, there's a lot of people that are not happy with the Electoral College, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. So we would really have to get both parties to be on board with having something independent. But I think right now people must like the way that we have it, because we're constantly going to court with lawsuits with the way that we're drawing our districts, which is an unfortunate thing that keeps happening.
It's affected, this affects who represents us.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
by not improper drawing of lines, you can cut out and protect the person who's in power at that point in time, the elected official. So what we're trying to get away, like I said, is away from who's going to represent us truly. And do you have enough of our voice and our vote? Does it count? And until we have that kind of justice, then we're going to continue to have the problems we have.
Nicole?
Ms. Tamarello, I'm going to have Judge Eccles make some comments specifically around the citizen piece of it. And then just want to give everybody a heads up to please think about raising their hands as we move on to other questions, and to put your questions in the chat box, and I will call on you as we come along. Judge Eccles.
Yeah, there's 2 points that were made there that I think that are important to consider. And one, I would think that both Adrian and Adrian Garcia, Commissioner Prestage, myself, as an elected official, would take issue with the comment that we don't represent the citizens. It's a politicians versus the citizens argument. And while we might disagree on some of the partisan issues, you get not to discount the problems with redistricting, but I think the first premise, and I would tell people all the time that they would come to different boards and meetings that said, I'm here representing the people. Well, the people elected me. The people elected Grady. The people elected Adrian. They represent the people. And I didn't represent Republicans or Democrats. I represented Texans in Harris County as county judge, and when I was in the legislature. And it's been my experience that Grady, Adrian, others in office too, feel like they represent the people of their district. That's not to say it's a perfect process, but the way the Redistricting Commission was set up in California was feeding on that. Politicians don't represent us through an initiative process. Now, I'm one who likes the initiative process, because I do think that often politicians have no incentive to solve those really critical issues or hot button issues like abortion, like guns, like a lot of those things that both parties feed off of the fight and don't have an incentive to get an issue resolved. And often through an initiative process, you can do it. California probably has too easy of an initiative process. It lets the tyranny of the majority come in, where the strong urban cores can override the rest of the state without really a thought for what it might do to the more rural parts of the state. But I believe in Texas, the only way you're going to accomplish something like this is through an initiative process that would try to provide some kind of a different mechanism of selecting them. But even then, it becomes highly political. And in California, that process, while they try to build a process that is not political, it is. And that goes to the whole nature of all politics being personal and driving the importance of the down ballot races and of the participation in the primary process, which is, I think, the theme of this whole event is, as opposed, and I can't disagree with you at all about the problems of redistricting. It's how you solve it that might be an issue. But the best way to solve it is to have everybody get out and participate in the process and make sure that regardless of what that issue is, you've got politicians that will respond and remember that we do represent the citizens in that office. And so I have a lot of respect for people, even whom I disagree with, that are willing to put their name on the ballot. I don't have a lot of respect for the people who hide behind appointments and commissions. I think it's a way that you often see the politicians try to push the accountability away from them to what comes out of those commissions. And that's the thing you got to worry about is retaining that accountability. When for that decision-making process. You can always vote the Republicans out. And I will tell you, in Texas right now, the legislature is almost irrelevant to the redistricting process because we do have a redistricting commission. And if the legislature can't agree on it, if you elected a Democrat House this time and they couldn't pass what the Senate wanted to do, didn't change it, it's going to be made up of a commission with Lieutenant Governor, the Speaker, the Attorney General, the Commissioner of the General Land Office, and the Comptroller drawing the lines. And those are all Republicans.
Thank you, Judge Eccles. I appreciate that. We'd like to move on to some other, I'm sure there are a bunch of other questions. I have one in my back pocket that I could ask almost any of you if we need to. Please don't forget to virtually raise your hand using the participant button at the bottom of your screen. And then there'll be a raise hand button within that participant situation. We've got a few questions that have been coming in through the chat. So one of the questions, and I'm gonna, let's see. Hold on, I've gotta be able to see it. And there was a question about why they decided to make a change in the date of the census. And I will get it, hold on, this is not as easy to, they need a questions box. That might be the best. Where did the question go? Why was the date for the deadline of the census changed? And we've had a couple of questions, a couple of answers. And Tanya, who was one of our panelists, said, not sure that there was a press release sent out about the change, but they felt that the September 30th date was more sufficient. And I know that Lydia Ozuna is on here, and Ms. Ozuna, I will give you a couple of minutes to just give the response that you gave to the question, and then we'll move on to some other questions as we move forward. So Ms. Ozuna, would you like to answer that question about why the deadline was changed?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Originally, the Census Bureau had asked both the House and Senate to pass legislation to extend the deadline for submitting the count to the administration. And they operated from the perspective that that was going to happen. And that's why they set the October 31 deadline. What ended up happening is that I believe, I may be wrong on this, but I think the House passed something, but the Senate never took it up. In the meantime, the pressures of the political environment that is going on right now, and pressures from the administration for the census to be completed in enough time so that the data could be submitted to the current administration by the original December 31st deadline, was put to bear on the census. So the census, like within from one day to the other, after this pressure was put out there, changed the deadline to September 30th, saying that if they ended it on September 30th, then they could meet the December 31st deadline. I'm not sure you know that once the census data deadline is set, then it has to go through a lot of computer processes to determine who gets additional seats and who doesn't. Once that is determined by law, it is submitted to the administration by December 31st, and then the administration reviews it, and then it's probably somewhere around February or March that it is submitted to the state legislatures. In Texas, it's particularly critical because our legislative season is from January 12th to May 31st. So if the data doesn't get there until late March or April, the window for drawing those lines officially with census data is very narrow. So that's the story behind the census data deadline. Recently, a judge ordered, the administration had started to pull back people from going door to door. And just a few days ago, a judge ruled that they couldn't do that. So where it is right now, there's a lot of confusion with the census and how it is being carried out.
Thank you, Ms. Ozuna. I appreciate that. Mr. Ray, I think I'm going to see if you could help us with a specific question. And if you're not the right person, by all means, let me defer if that needs to be had. So we have two questions I think are interesting. One is about the straight ticket and why that was straight ticket ballot, that why it was changed. If you could give us some background on that. But then we also have some questions on, so kind of all related to mail-in early voting. So can you turn in your mail-in ballot at any early voting site, or do you have to mail it? Can you take it to the county clerk? And then what if you change your mind about mailing in your ballot? So you've asked for one, and then you decide, no, I'm going to show up and vote in person. So can you talk to that, please? Speak to that, please.
Sure, yeah, mail-in balloting. In order to get a mail-in ballot, you have to be eligible, which means you have to be a 65 or over. You have to have a disability. You have to be planning to be out of the county during the election period, or you have to be incarcerated but otherwise eligible to vote. You have to submit an application specifying which one of those eligibilities you qualify for. And once you do, you'll be sent a ballot. Now, there are three ways you can return a ballot. One is you can mail it back. The second one is you can send it back to the clerk by common carrier. A common carrier is a company that is in the business of delivering packages for hire. So UPS, for example, is a common carrier. FedEx is a common carrier. The third way is to deliver it in person. You can deliver it in person. The law says you can deliver it in person on election day at the clerk's office. But because of the emergency, the governor has expanded the period of time during which you can deliver it. And I don't know if you guys can hear me again because my screen is once again completely frozen.
We can hear you.
So
I can hear you. We're good.
We hear you and see you.
deliver it is, okay, could you hear me? Everything froze. Anyways, personal delivery. Because of the pandemic, the governor has expanded when you can deliver in person your mail-in ballot. Now here, I have to describe this very carefully. Your ballot can be delivered only to an office of the county clerk. There is an office downtown, the main office, and there are 11 branch offices where you can mail it in, where you can deliver it in person. You cannot just take it to any polling place and give it to the election clerk. In addition to those usual places, you can deliver it to the the Election Technology Center, which is on Todd Street, which is right off of Hempstead Highway on the northwest side, or you can bring it to Energy Arena. Energy Arena is where we set up our central operation for this particular election, and our central count is going to take place there. If you want to deliver it in person, you have to bring it yourself. You can't give it to somebody else to deliver for you. And when you appear in person to deliver it, you have to show an identification, the same as when you appear to vote. But it'd be a simple process. You can show up, show them your driver's license, hand them the ballot, and off you go. You can't deliver somebody else's ballot. You have to deliver yours in person. There's a list on harrisvotes.com of where the addresses of all the branch offices of the county clerk's office are. There are usual places of business. There's one in Chimney Rock. There's one in Baytown. They're spread all over the county. So those are the three methods by which you can do it. And there's no limitation as to time anymore. The governor said you can deliver it whenever. So if you get mailed a mail-in ballot, and we'll start mailing them out in a couple of weeks, and you fill it out and you want to go hand it in, you can go to any one of those places as soon as you are ready and deliver it in person, show your identification, and deliver it that way. That way you don't have to worry about all this talk about how fast the post office is delivering stuff. You don't have to worry about it. If you get a mail-in ballot and you change your mind and said, no, I think I'd rather vote in person, you have two options. One is you can take your mail-in ballot with you when you vote in person. You can give it to the election clerk. They can cancel the mail-in ballot and then they'll let you vote a regular ballot in person. The second way is, especially if you've lost that mail-in ballot, you can go and say, I don't have my mail-in ballot with me, but I would like to vote in person. In that situation, the electronic poll book will show that you were sent a mail-in ballot. And therefore, what they'll do is they'll offer to let you vote a provisional ballot. A provisional ballot is when you're unable to actually establish that you're eligible to vote when you appear in person, but it allows you to cast a ballot, which they will consider at the early voting ballot board. The early voting ballot board is a political appointed group that considers and makes decisions about whether mail-in ballots and provisional ballots will count. So if you do that, if you come in and say, I want to cast a provisional ballot, I don't have my mail-in ballot, what'll happen is that provisional ballot will go to the early voting ballot board. They will check to see if your mail-in ballot was actually delivered. If it was, they'll count the mail-in ballot. If it wasn't, they will count the provisional ballot that you cast. Either way, your vote will count one way or the other. So those are the options that you have in trying to cast your mail-in ballot. I forget what the other question was, but
No, you got it. You got both of them. So that was an excellent explanation, and I appreciate your help with that. I'm going to take a little privilege again, and I think I'm going to ask Ms. Rivera this question. Tanya, this is about communicating with our elected officials. And it's become to me an interesting issue because we have so many more vehicles by which to communicate. So there's always been what we call snail mail now, and there's phone, and then there's email, and then there's most officials have a contact form on their website that goes somewhere that I don't know, but others may. And I've been told what is the best way to do it, but I wanted to get somebody from the inside that's probably receiving that feedback to talk about how is the best way to have our voice heard, because it feels a little bit like screaming into the void sometimes. So we want to make sure that it's the importance of it is understood. Would you mind sharing?
Well, I wouldn't say that one form is better than the other. I mean, there's different things. I mean, most recently I've seen people using Twitter to kind of tweet at elected officials if they see like a pothole or a ditch, and then our staff is monitoring those social media platforms so that we can then create a service request and those types of things. We do, encourage people to come sign up to speak for commissioner's court. People send letters. So I don't know which one would necessarily be effective, but obviously if there's an issue that's really important to folks, is getting your friends and neighbors to also write in, because they do keep track to kind of say, I received a lot of feedback from my constituents in regards to this particular issue, and engage your civic association for the events that, meetings and things like that, to invite your elected official to come out. And I apologize, I have boys over here running around in the background, and in between virtual learning and weekends, everything's happening in the house. But so I would just say that use whatever platform you feel most comfortable with. I would say that some folks say that handwritten letters are very personal, and we want to make sure that we respond to those in a timely fashion.
Thank you so much. Judge Eccles, I'm going to leave that same question with you. And one of the questions that I failed to highlight was around why they eliminated straight ticket. If you have anything to say about that, that would be helpful as well. I will just say my personal experience has been that the advice is to write in a letter via snail mail, or make a phone call, and that it's perceived that folks have more of a commitment to an issue if they do that and it's listened to. So if you would like to share any thoughts on communicating with your elected officials.
Sure, you have 2 points there. One was the straight ticket voting. Texas is actually one of the few states that have the straight ticket voting like that. I don't know, Nicole, when you were up in DC or Virginia there, if you were registered to vote there, if you stayed a resident of Texas. But up there, they don't even designate, in Virginia, I don't believe they even designate the party that you're affiliated with on the ballot. You have to go and look up those things yourself as well. The parties do a pretty good job of getting that information out, but it hadn't been straight ticket voting. It was put in back in the days of LBJ, Back in the 60s is when they started the straight ticket voting in Texas. And it has just continued through until now. I'm one who's glad to see it gone. I've always thought that it leads, particularly in areas like Houston or Dallas, the big urban core where you've got 80 or 100 different people on the ballot, Doug, as you talked about. You can't know them all, so people just get lazy and don't take time to learn when here they are. So it'll be interesting to see what difference it makes. Moving on to how to communicate with the elected officials, Nicole, I think you're right on one. The key point is a letter. A snail mail letter will have more of an impact than a text or some kind of it kind of depends on the issue probably as much as anything. Commissioner Garcia may have something in his office that makes it easy to report potholes or community service types of issues they want to see dealt with that the commissioner has to do. If you're dealing with a member of Congress, a lot of the times on the telephone, they just track it. It's a tracking number, and it depends upon where you live. It makes the biggest difference for a member of Congress or a state legislature. I'm sure for commissioners as well. For me, I represented the whole county, so it wasn't as big of an issue. But if there's somebody who lives in their district, and through the social media process that is out there now, and the way to drive opinions, you can easily shut down a telephone switchboard in Washington or drive it to a point where it becomes almost meaningless to call your member of Congress. Most all of them have town hall meetings. We did that when I was there. Our commissioners' courts did not last as hours as they did now. It was more of we tried to run it more as a business meeting, but we frequently had community meetings where people would come out and talk to us. That's always a great place to catch the commissioner, the member of Congress, the county judge. If they're out at a forum somewhere in the community, to have an opportunity to ask a question, to hand them a note, ask them to have a staff person to follow up to help with that is always a very effective way to communicate. And a lot of the folks now do follow the social media more. It has grown tremendously since the 12 or 15 years since I've been in office. And they will, as was mentioned there by Tanya, track that social media and look at trends and what people are interested in. It's harder to respond to a Facebook post than it is to understand who it is that's writing for a letter. But it is important that you communicate regardless of how you decide to do it.
Thank you, Judge Eccles. That has been my experience, that it is very much the issue-driven scenario, and don't want to shut the phone systems down like that, but also the snail mail piece is super helpful. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Ray, sorry. And to highlight to you also, to everyone, that the bios are being put in the chat. So if you want to check those out, please do. And I don't know if they'll be put on the Unity site afterwards, but possibly. So Mr. Ray, we have some follow-up questions. One is kind of a technical question. Somebody asked what the name of the electronics center at Todd Street near Hempstead is. And then the other one is more around what happens with rejected ballots.
Okay, the Election Technology Center is basically a warehouse. Todd Street is a little street that runs on the other side of the railroad tracks that goes along North Hempstead, south of 34th Street. And it has a big sign on it, but it looks just like any other warehouse other than that. But the Election Technology Center is where we keep all the voting machines, is where we program all the voting machines, is where we keep all the equipment that we issue for voting. And it was we bought it from the estate of John O'Quinn. It's where he kept his car collection. So it looks like an office warehouse, and it's worked real well for us. As far as rejected ballots are concerned, if you send in a mail-in ballot that has some defect to it, we do have a process whereby we can contact the voter in order to ask them to cure whatever defect that is. We can call them on the phone and give them an opportunity to come down, or to notify them that, the mail-in ballot they sent us is defective and that they can go vote in person as an alternative. The most common problem we have with mail-in ballots is that the voter will forget to sign it. Without a signature, we can't process it, and we can't accept it. But if we have a problem, we're required by law to attempt to to contact that voter and get them into a situation either to send it back to them to cure that defect or have them come into the office to cure the defect. So that's the process that we use.
Thank you very much. So I want to ask Stephanie, Ms. Tamarello, we had a question about whether we had any recent information on number of poll workers and if it was enough. And that may be a question we need to ask somebody else as well. But the follow-up to that was around poll workers versus election workers. And I know you're an election judge, and so I'm kind of assuming you might have some input on that. And if not, please let me know. But do you have any information, Ms. Tamarello, on poll workers and election workers?
Well, here in Fort Bend County, I can refer to that. I can't talk for Harris County, okay? In Fort Bend County, we have people, every presiding judge at a voting center can hire people to work the polls. Those are called clerks. And folks can apply to be one of those. And then the person who's responsible in Fort Bend, Rose Gonzalez, goes through that and develops a whole list of people who are interested in working the polls. So let me give you an example right now for the presidential election. I have for the election day, I have a poll where I would work with I'm the presiding judge, then an alternative judge, and then hire 3 what we call clerks. Actually, we all work as a team together. And people are offered a certain amount of money for doing that. We can't go to Hawaii on it, but there is a little bit of a salary that's given that includes all the training hours, all the setup hours, and then all the hours for conducting the day of election, or if it's the early election crew, that's the same thing. Oftentimes we use election workers and poll workers interchangeably, but there's also a whole section on poll watchers. I will just tell you, by the way, in Fort Bend County, having talked to Rose just yesterday, she has gotten over 200 people who want to volunteer to work the election centers, which is really wonderful. She's usually scraping to try to find workers to cover all the centers, all the voting centers. And I can't tell you the numbers right now as far as our places, the total numbers, but she was delighted to have more than 200 people sign up and apply to be a poll worker. There are also poll watchers. Oftentimes a candidate might be concerned about what's going on at a particular poll, and they will assign or ask somebody to be a poll watcher. That's a candidate. We can also have a poll, and some of you, even Grady, can chime in on this. The federal people can send in. I was working an election where we had, way back when, we had a federal poll watcher come in, and they're not workers. Those are people who can watch everything you do to be sure that you are conducting yourself properly and justly to every voter. Then there can be poll watchers outside. There's a 100-foot perimeter that they must keep, but they can also be watching things that are going on outside. And those are all appointed in different ways, either by party or by candidate or by the federal level. Is that answering your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. That was great. That was good information. Commissioner Prestage, did you want to add anything to that?
No, Stephanie was pretty thorough, but well, we do respect the authority of that election official at that polling site.
Yeah.
That's very important that they be allowed to maintain order, and I've been told that decisions they make carry the weight of a district judge. And so, I mean, that's important, because without that, you'd have anarchy.
Yeah, people have to, whoever does the poll watching has to come with all the proper identification. I won't let anybody in, or we won't let anybody in that's not following the directions, and they have to show us their ID, and they have to wear a badge and all that kind of stuff. So.
Mr. Ray, do you have any numbers on volunteer poll workers in Harris County, and if there's a need?
There's a tremendous need, yes. If you can contact the clerk's office, we pay $17 an hour. The Yeah, the person in charge is called the presiding judge, and that's appointed by the party who won that precinct in the last gubernatorial election, and the alternate judge is appointed by the other major party. So in a precinct where the Republican won, the presiding judge would be a Republican, the alternate judge would be a Democrat. And in those precincts where the Democrat won, then the presiding judge would be a Democrat and the alternate judge. The alternate judge is in charge when the presiding judge is not present. Presiding judge then hires a number of clerks. We have a special program in Harris County where if you're a high school student, if you're at least 16 and you're enrolled in school and you get the permission of your principal, that you can work during the election. And we encourage, we would like to have at least 2 of these high school clerks at each polling place. And they also get paid. This is not a volunteer position purely. We find that they're particularly good at things like, handling problems with the machines. For some reason, young people have, a special facility with dealing with technology that us older folk don't quite have. But we would like to have at least 2 of those folks at each polling place. And as I emphasized before, we're going to have 808 different polling places. So we're going to have over 1,600 judges and alternate judges. We would like to have 1,600 student clerks. We'll probably have somewhere in the neighborhood of over 3,000 clerks. So we're talking about over 6,000, 7,000 people that we need to man our polling places on election day, and there's a tremendous need. We're working on it. We're confident we'll be able to fully staff everything, but we would encourage anybody to contact the county clerk's office who would be interested in doing that sort of work on election day. And the same is true for early voting. We're actually having expanded early voting. It starts a week earlier than ordinary. The governor expanded the number of days when we would be working. So it starts on October the 13th and goes to the 30th of October. We need people to staff it during those whole times. We've expanded the number of hours so that it's 7 to 7 every day, except on Sunday when it's 12 to 7. And the last 3 days before the last day, which would be the 26th through, let's say the 27th through the 29th of October, we'll be staying open at every polling place till 10 o'clock at night. So it'll be 7 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night. We have to have enough people to be able to have shifts to cover all that time. And in fact, there's going to be 7 locations on the 29th, or the evening of the 28th going into the 29th. We're going to keep it open 24 hours. So you'll be able to vote at 3 o'clock in the morning if you can find one of those 7 locations and actually vote if that fits in better with your schedule. So there's a lot of hours, and we need a lot of people to cover it all. And as I said before, there's going to be 120 different early voting spaces. So we're talking about thousands of people that we need to staff those as well. We also are going to have 9 locations where you can do drive-through voting. You don't even have to get out of your car. The Toyota Center is the garage down there we're going to use for drive-through voting. The parking lot at Energy Arena we're going to use for drive-through voting. Be lots of machines. You just drive up, show them your ID. They'll give you the machine and you can vote without even getting out of your car. So, and like I said, there'll be 9 different locations where you'll be able to do that. So we need a lot of folks, Yeah, give us a call. We'll take you.
And maybe we can add, I'm sure we have the link to the clerk's office on our helpful links, but maybe we could add something specifically on the high school one. That would be definitely one we want to get around and get folks interested early on. So we'll keep our eyes open for that. So we are getting close to the end of our session, and I want to thank everybody for participating, but I also want to give folks the chance to make any parting comments. So we'll start with Commissioner Prestage, and then Judge Eccles, and then Tanya had to leave, but her information is in the chat, so you can find out how to contact her if you have questions for her specifically, and then Mr. Ray, and we'll see where we are on time at that point. So Commissioner Prestage, do you have any parting comments you'd like to give us?
Well, first I want to say thank you. This has been enlightening to me, and I would hope that you could do this on a more frequent basis and not during the heart of the election season. I think it's a year-round effort is necessary for there to be total civic involvement. I learned a little bit, and I'm excited about it. And I look forward to a pleasant election this year. I know it's going to be, that's wishful thinking, but I'm excited about it. So keep me in mind when you want these things. I have so many things I want to say,
Yeah.
but the time just doesn't permit it. And we had a real narrow sort of focus, and that's fine. That's fine. We'd be here all night if we. So I want to say thank you, Nicole, and thank you to the whole Unity family. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Prestage. All of the comments have led me to highlight something one of our participants has indicated, which is because we don't have a straight ticket this year, it's going to take you more time to vote.
Let me speak to that, and
yes.
that's Harris County. Yeah, I really, that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Fort Bend County, we don't have 30 judges. I mean, we have a handful. And also, we have new voting technology. So we actually gave our machines to Harris County so they can get through this election. We bought new touchscreen voting equipment, and our whole ballot will probably be on 2 pages, on 2 screens. So still you have to have the diligence to go down and mark every election, but it's much more more similar to an iPad, where you're used to the touchscreen and not the wheel and the punch the thing, that kind of thing. And we have we submit the ballot on screen, and a paper ballot marked how you want it is printed out, and you can review that, and you can go into a ballot box. So there's a verifiable paper ballot. So we bought this technology, and we were kind of lucky. We went through a process to evaluate various vendors, and we picked a vendor, and that vendor, we were anticipating spending $15 million on our system. And that vendor was close to doing a deal with Cook County, Illinois. And they just knew they had it. They went and bought this equipment ahead of time. At the last minute, the Cook County Commission changed and went to another vendor.
Wow.
We got, we had budgeted $15 million. We ended up spending $7 million because they had to get rid of that equipment that they had already bought. So we were just in the right place, right time. And I suspect that Harris County will be changing pretty soon, but changing before a major election, was probably not a good move. We had a chance to get it and try it in the primary runoffs. So we got some of the kinks out of it, but we still going to have, a big turnout, and so we still may have some drama down our way. But our system will make it much easier for us to vote along ballot.
Thank you for that very much. Yeah, so 3 a.m. In Harris County might be the exact time that's useful for all of us. I'm thinking about it already. So Judge Eccles, would you like to give us any parting words? You're muted, I believe.
There we go.
There we go.
I have a dog running around here too sometimes. Yeah. I could have brought him up, and he's really very cute, and he would have come in and sort of barking at the door. Just thanks to everybody, Unity, for your efforts putting this together. Grady, appreciate your service. Enjoyed. We have a great partnership, long-term relationship. Loved working with Fort Bend when I was there, and I'm hoping that continues, and I'm assuming it does. As Nicole mentioned earlier, it is a region that works well together and has been a great model for the community. I do think that the discussion re-emphasized the importance of participation. And I appreciated, Stephanie, y'all's discussion about the redistricting issues, but more than anything, it brings up the idea that it is a citizen government, and the people of America decide who's going to govern America. And in theory, we all represent the people of America. I'm not on the ballot. It's pretty refreshing that I don't have to worry about those things so much anymore. I don't have to ask you for your vote. I can, but I do appreciate your participation in the process. And I particularly appreciate Grady being here, taking time off to do it. He's got a lot of other places to be, other constituencies to look at. And most of us don't live in Fort Bend County, Grady, so it's even more important that you're here, more rigorous. But participating in the primary and then going down the ballot and holding the officials accountable. I always felt like people needed to hold me accountable for what happened in office, and you can do that too. Elections are there for a reason, and they matter. And so thanks to you and everybody who put this together, and for giving me a chance to see Nicole. I hadn't talked to her in a long time, and she was great when she worked for the Harris County. We trained her well down there to do bigger and better things. So We appreciate all of you and your involvement here. More importantly, what you're doing to build a better Houston, Harris County, Texas, and America. So thank you all.
Thank you, Judge Eccles. I appreciate that. And a little known fact, and this is again Nicole's opinion, we probably are often different sides of issues like if you saw it on paper, we might be on different sides of the issue, but we work well together. And I think that says something about the fact that I felt comfortable working in your office. And so you say you're not in elected office now, but maybe in the future again, just keep it in mind. So Mr. Ray, do you have any parting comments for us?
Yes, I'd like to reemphasize that you should prepare yourself if you're a Harris County voter ahead of time. Wait until the ballot is posted on harrisvotes.com and go and download and print out your individual ballot and prepare yourself ahead of time. Take those notes with you when you go to the ballot box, and it'll make the process a lot easier to get through all those names that you're going to encounter, all those pages. I know Commissioner Prestage, the Harris County is preparing right now to buy some new machines. We're probably going to spend a lot more than $7 million up in Harris County. But those won't be here for this election. We're going to probably, try them out next year and have them in place for 2022. But we think that, this process that we're going through, we have a lot of really good people working there at the county clerk's office. If you need information, their phone number is 713-755-6965. You can call that number at 713-755-6965. And for my Unity family, if any of you have questions that you think I might be able to answer, and believe me, I can answer a lot of questions. Let me give you my phone number. That is 281-935-1904. That's 281-935-1904. And I think I saw that my mother was on the panel over there. So I think she's already got my number. But for the rest of you, it's 281-935-1904. And I will try to help you with any problem that you might have.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. So we are, yes, very much. Round of applause for everyone. Reverend Karen is going to be doing a closing prayer, but I will take this opportunity to say thank you very much to all that have participated in the planning and the execution and the listening of this event. And probably one of the most important areas that we'd like you to remember is the save the dates, or not the save the dates, the important dates to remember. They will be on our on the Unity website with the other handouts, and I'm going to try to share my screen really quick and give you a chance to look at them while I ramble on. And again, it's the last day to register is the 5th. The request to mail-in ballot is the 23rd, both of October. We have election day on November 3rd. But before that, with all the hours that Mr. Ray spoke of, we start early voting on October 13th. And please consider volunteering and helping us, especially here in Harris County where we need thousands and thousands of people. So Reverend Karen, would you like to send us away?
Well, I will do that, and just want to say how grateful I am, not only for all of the work that the team has done to really create this opportunity, our panelists who've given up of their time, but also all of you who have taken up your afternoon to listen and to participate and to be earnestly interested in how we can be responsible voters this time and going forward. And so in that, I'm just going to invite us just to breathe for just a moment. You can keep breathing after that too. Just take a breath and just know that that our sincerest desire is for a smooth and peaceful process in allowing the desire and the will of the people to be revealed in every method and every manner that we have designed, so that we may indeed create a government for the people, by the people. and let the people decide exactly who shall be our leaders, our representatives, and help to represent what is in the highest and best for us all. We know it is being done. We are grateful for the leaders who have stepped forward and for those who will take the baton and step forward in our new era as we continue this ever-evolving process of democracy. And so it is. Amen. Thank you, Nicole, for your leadership and for your being at the, I think we can all say thank you so much for all that you've done for us today in particular. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And keep an eye on the webpage. We'll try to catch up with the information you've asked for and put it out there as well, and be an opportunity for you to direct people to the webpage and also share this recorded version so that others can be benefited by what we've learned today. And thank you. Thank you to all of our panelists. Really appreciate you all.